Hi, everybody. Can you host a holiday event in 399 square feet or less? That's the question I'm asking today, and that's what we're going to talk about is tiny hospitality. Being able to have family, friends over for a holiday event in a tiny home. Can it be done? I'm Cindy. I'm a member of your Tiny Home Tours team, and I want to thank you for joining our live Q&A. Let's Talk Tiny. We're here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central, and I'm glad you're joining me today. And I want to wish you a happy almost Thanksgiving, everybody. I'm glad that you're here and joining me. I want you to let me know in the comments if you usually have family and friends at your house for the holidays. Um, you know, Even if you're not living tiny yet, do you usually host family and friends for the holidays? So I have a really good friend that lives here in the community. She actually lived across the street from me in Katy, Texas. And when I moved here, I found a house for her and brought her here. We've been friends for over 25 years. And she's actually hosted 17 family members for a holiday dinner at her home at one time. 17. Now that included adults and children. And I mean it was pretty crowded, but they enjoyed themselves. And they weren't there all day. They came there just for the dinner. And I think that they did something different afterwards, but it can certainly be done. You can host an event in your tiny home if that's something that's important to you. And I know it is important for a lot of people. Now, myself, I've had as many as 6 family members in my tiny home at one time for a meal. We watched movies, hung out on the couch. And so, it was crowded. It wasn't chaotic, and it was fun. It's cozy. So, Mahogany says, Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Thank you, Mahogany. I'd like to know, Mahogany, are you living in a tiny home right now? And if so, how many people have you had at your home at one time for a gathering? I'd love to know that from you. So, I want to tell you, be sure to hang around today because we're going to talk about some space saving hosting strategies. We're going to talk about some ideas for seating and dining and flow if hosting is important to you. And then we're going to talk about how to make guests feel comfortable in a small space because although we're comfortable in our small spaces, our guest might not be so comfortable in a tiny space, but I know that we can make them feel comfortable. So let me know in the comments, is having space for family and friends to come over important to you when considering going tiny? I know there are those of you out there that you are hostesses. My friend, she's the hostess with the mostest. I mean, she loves to host. Not so much me because I'm not a big fan of cooking. I don't mind people coming over, but I'm all about potluck or let's order pizza. But I know for some of you that's very important. I've watched some of our own tiny home tour videos where people, when they're looking for a home or when they were looking for a home, that was important to them was how many people they could gather around their table. And for many of us, we were used to hosting or having family and friends over during the holidays before we went tiny. For myself, we always had our family over before we went tiny. My son and his wife would come over along with my daughter and her husband at the time and their 3 children. So we had quite a good group in our home. And it was something that we enjoyed doing. Now, for me, it wasn't a deal breaker about going tiny because now, and even before we moved, we started going to my son's house because he had babies. And it was easier for him to stay at home with the babies so they could take naps, what have you, instead of coming over and hauling all of their stuff over to our home. So I want to remind you, if you're just joining us, that we're asking the question today: can you entertain while living in a tiny home? And if you have an answer to that, whether you think it's yes or no, I'd love for you to comment in the comments. So, how can we make a tiny space more functional, better when we want to host family and friends, whether it's two or whether it's, six? How can we make our space more comfortable? Let's talk about that. Tropical Empress and Spirit says, I love being surrounded by loved ones, but I enjoy it more going to other people's homes. I'm with you, girl. I would rather let everybody else do the work and me go and have fun. I'll bring a dish, but I'm not as keen about having family and friends at my house. And not because it's tiny, it was never something that I liked to do before I moved tiny. So I'm with you. So, again, let's just jump into a few. And as questions come up, or comments come up, I'll read them. But let's just talk about a few solutions for your space when you want to host somebody. One of the most important things I would say is to consider your space. If you're planning an event, consider your space, um, your furniture, your setup, how can things be arranged, and really calculate how many people you can fit in your space comfortably. I think that's very important, is to not just wait until they all come over and bring their kids. Calculate how many do you really think you can feasibly have over and everybody be comfortable and enjoy themselves before planning an event. Now, one of the things that we have here in our tiny home is a porch. It's 10 by 15. It's a really great size. I already have a round table out there with 4 chairs, and we utilize that space a lot. I've got French doors that we open up so it really becomes an extension of the house. So if you were thinking about hosting an event, that's something to think about, is can you just extend outside of the normal living space of your home? Can you utilize a porch or a deck? Janet says, have an outdoor site to entertain. Yes, I live really tiny in 8 by 16. That is tiny, Janet, but I'm glad that you don't let that keep you from entertaining if that's something you want to do. On a lot of our videos, I've seen people with these beautiful decks with the lights strung up, and it's really, an outdoor space can be just as cozy of a space as an indoor space, but you just have to work to make it that way. So I agree with you. Have an outdoor space, utilize the outdoor space. If you have a yard of any kind, use your yard. Um, you can set chairs and a table out in the yard if the weather's nice. That would be a great idea. It gives people more space to kind of move around, and you can still have little pockets of people inside if need be, or on the porch if need be. And I was going to say too, have guests bring their own lawn chairs. Maybe you don't have enough chairs. Have guests bring their own lawn chairs. I know here in Texas, which is a big hospitality state, um, it's not a big deal to ask your guests to bring their a lawn chair if you're having an outdoor event. So I would consider that as well. And then the second thing I want to talk about is be creative in your seating. If you look around, you really do have a lot of different things that you can use for seating if you're having guests, and especially if some of those guests are children. So in our home, we have a beanbag chair. My grandchildren fight over that beanbag chair, and it's comfortable. It's actually shaped like a chair. If you have beanbag chairs, that's a great seating opportunity for a guest. Um, Stools. A lot of people have a little bar area or place where they have stools to eat at a small table. Utilize those stools. ottomans are a great seating for guests. And then outdoor furniture as well. A lot of times, if we have people over, we'll bring in the chairs. If we don't want to be out on the porch, maybe it's too hot or too cold, we'll bring in the chairs from outside and sit them here in the living room. And usually, what we do, we give our guest the couch to sit on, and we take the more uncomfortable chairs. Not that they're uncomfortable, but the couch is definitely more comfortable. So that's an idea. And then folding tables. You know, almost everybody has a folding table. I have one out in my shed, but maybe you live in a tiny home where you can't store a folding table. If you live in a community or if you have neighbors around, maybe ask if you could borrow one if you're wanting to have family over. That would be a great idea. And then of course, folding chairs are a great idea as well. And then something my husband and I use every day are TV trays. I think in a tiny home, a TV tray is a must. And so that's something that you can use for your guests to use as a table. If you have many guests, you can sit some people out on the porch, you could sit some people on the couch and let them use TV trays. And if you have, like me, the doors open, it's like everybody's in one big room. So be creative. And I have an island. And I know a lot of tiny homes do have islands, especially park models. They come with an island that's on wheels, which you can move around in the home or you can move out onto your porch. And I know my island, I could sit four people comfortably on stools around my island. So that's another thing that you could do to bring in guests to your home. Kevin says, love your inside of your home. Very pretty. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. I do too. I love it. It's my happy place. Really and truly it is. I appreciate you saying that. Kevin, let us know. Do you have people over at your house? And if so, how many have you had at one time? How many guests have you had at one time? You can use your bedroom, or if you have a loft like we do, you could use that when your guests come over. If they have coats or if they have bags, if they have purses, you could put those in the bedroom or upstairs in the loft to get them out of the way and not take up the space where people are going to be, eating, fellowshipping. So that's an idea too. I'm not seeing any ideas coming up on my screen. I'd sure love to see some of your ideas. What do you do when you have people over? I'd love to see it. Um, let's see here. Blake says, my husband and I are thinking about tiny living. He wants a gas stove. Is that an option and is it expensive? Well, I don't know if it's expensive, but it's an option depending on where you live, Blake. Because I know here in my community, everyone is on electric. We don't have gas here. But there are plenty of communities that allow you to have either or. And certainly, if you're living in a towable tiny home, you can have gas because you can use propane tanks. So, yeah, it's definitely an option. And one thing, I said this last week, I want to throw it out again this week. Somebody asked me if what were the necessities that I felt like I needed in a tiny home. Now, mind you, again, I'm not a big hostess and I'm not a great cook. So I think I would get rid of my electric stove and oven and maybe just put in a small convection oven and maybe a convection cooktop, very small 2 burner. So, think about that too when you're thinking of expense. If you want gas, it doesn't have to be a big gas stove and oven. You can go tinier. So think about that. But that is a good question. If you're wanting to host an event at your home, you're going to need a way to cook that food, and you want to cook in a way that's comfortable to you. And I know a lot of people like gas, so thank you for that. So moving on, let's talk about space and having space for food If you're hosting an event, that's important. What are you going to do with all that food? I know for most of us, if we're doing a holiday meal, it's all about a lot of food. I know that we're planning on a lot of food for our Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow, but it's not going to be here. Um, so if you're thinking about having a lot of food, you have to think about where are you going to put that food when your guests are there for dinner. So one of the things that I would encourage is to serve buffet style. You probably aren't going to have a big enough table to put all that food on a table like a traditional Thanksgiving dinner would be, or at least that's what I think of from when I was growing up and when we go to my son's house. You're going to have to serve buffet style more than likely, and you're going to have to find a space to put that food to serve buffet style. So one thing here in my home on my I'm sorry, stove top, I have what's called a noodle board. And I've actually done a reel about my noodle board. It's you can order it off Amazon. It goes on the top of your stove, and it actually creates quite a bit of countertop space if you don't have a lot of countertop space. So definitely you can use your stovetop for putting food on for your to serve your guest. And of course your countertop space. If you have an island and you don't need that outside, you can use that for putting food on. And then also, again, TV trays are an excellent idea if you have guests and you want to serve food. You can consider that, but I have some other ideas that are kind of out of the box. And that's what I want us to consider is thinking out of the box when we're thinking about hosting people, having a lot of food, having drinks. We need to think out of the box. So one idea that I have is I have a cabinet underneath my TV. And that countertop, that cabinet space top would be a great space, maybe for desserts or even a drink station. And that takes some space away from the countertops and gives you a space to put some things that maybe you can make different stations in your home, a dessert station, a drink station, and a food station. So Josie says, Happy holidays. Your tiny home, at least what I can see in the background, is beautiful. I always appreciate those comments. Thank you. I worked hard to make this tiny home a place that felt as comfortable to my husband and I as our 2,400 square foot home that we lived in. And so I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I want you to know too, if you're considering going tiny, you can make your space homey. You can make it comfortable. You can make it beautiful. You can make it your own, just as you would any other home that you've lived in. And you can make it a place that's inviting to have guests in. I have people come to my home and they love coming over to my house. They don't think of it as tiny. As a matter of fact, one of the comments I get often is, wow, this isn't as small as I thought it would be, which is a good comment because I don't think that it's very small. I think it feels big to my husband and I. Both of us say, after watching some of the tiny home tours videos and seeing some of the homes that are, under 300 square feet, this feels big. So thank you. So let's see, what have we not talked about? Also, I want to talk about, so in my community, we have a community center that anybody can use. You just have to put your name on a list and reserve it for yourself. But maybe if you're considering going tiny and hosting is something that's important to you, think about that. Look for a community if you're wanting to live in a community that has a space that anyone can use by reservation. And if you have a large event, which I host large events there often at our community center. So if you have a large event, that's a great outlet to invite people over and serve them or host them in the community center. Ours has a couch, it has chairs, it has tables, it has a full-size kitchen, but then also we have an outdoor area that has picnic tables, barbecue pits, and it's covered. So when you're thinking in terms of wanting to go tiny, don't limit your space just to your space. Think in terms of what, if you're going to live in a community, it has to offer. Or think in terms of, if you're wanting to put your home on land, do you have enough outdoor space that you could have people over if that's important to you? So it looks like uh, we're not getting a lot of comments. So I tell you what, I'm going to just maybe think in terms of ending a little bit earlier today, unless I get some comments here. But I want to just say, I want to leave you with this. Hosting can be fun, it can be memorable, and it can be cozy in a tiny home. I will say that my grandkids love coming over to my tiny home. I've had all three of them here at one time, spending the night, even for a weekend. So it just is a matter of creating that atmosphere. And I always think if you believe that it's comfortable, they're going to believe that it's comfortable. I'd love for any of you to share any photos of uh, any, if you've had a gathering at your home and you've taken photos of quite a few friends. Share them in the comments so people can see that this is something that's very doable, and they don't have to give up the idea of tiny living because they love to host events. And Valerie says, love this. Thanks, Valerie. I appreciate that. Do you live in a tiny home right now, Valerie? I'd love to know. And if so, have you hosted events at your tiny home? Um, I'd also like to know if you've done something that maybe I haven't mentioned in when you're hosting. If you've done something that I haven't said, maybe something that's way out of the box that I haven't thought of, I'd love to hear that in the comments too. Even if it's, during the week, I'd love to have you share those things, because I know this is an issue for many women that I know that would keep them from going tiny. So I want them to see that this lifestyle is possible, even if they're used to living in a large space and hosting in a large space. They can do that in a tiny space. And I always say, there's nothing, I have found that there's absolutely nothing that I did in my 2,400 square foot home that I haven't been able to do here in my 399 square foot home. Our biggest takeaway today, the thing I want you to get most, is you can be creative. You don't have to do it the way you did in a larger home. You can do it in different ways. People, I know my family don't mind coming over to my house and sitting on the floor. My grandkids, they'll throw a pillow on the floor and sit on the floor. Um, we all cozy up on the couch and watch movies. So you can get creative. Don't rule out the possibilities of something that you would love to do, but you're afraid to do because it's a tiny space. And then I want to leave you with this takeaway. You can use up all the space. I know my friend that I told you about, she, when she has a lot of family over, a lot of times they're in different rooms within the home. So the grandkids might be up in the loft playing games, doing whatever they do up there. She's told me that her daughter and daughter-in-laws will often go into their bedroom, her and her husband's bedroom, and they'll watch movies. Sometimes she'll go in there and join them. The guys will be out on the porch. So understand that you can have people in different areas of the house and it still feel like family being over. Valerie says, I do not, but seriously thinking about it. Good for you, Valerie. Well, I want to encourage you that it's a wonderful lifestyle, number one, but also if hosting is something that you love to do, it's very doable in a tiny house, as well as anything else that you do in your home right now, you can do here in your tiny home. Um, and so thank you for that. Let's see. So anyway, use all of your space. And then the last thing I want to say is make a plan before your guests arrive. don't wait until everybody's coming over to get a plan on where you're going to put stuff, how you're going to seat people. You have to have a good plan before everybody comes. And that's something you would do in a larger home as well. You would always want to have a plan. So let's see, it says two tiny homes. How does one get a tour on this channel? Well, I tell you what, if you go to our YouTube channel or to our website, tinyhometours.com, you can, I think there is an area where you can sign up to have a tour. You could also contact me at Cindy, CINDY, at tinyhometours.com, and I'd love to talk to you about that. So thank you for that. Um, So don't let the fear of having to give up something that you love doing keep you from your tiny home dream. That's the biggest thing I want you to hear today. Don't let something you love doing keep you from that dream. And if you're ready to get started and ready to take the next step in going tiny, we have some great tools for you that will give you great information and direction in how to get started. And I actually forgot to tell Chris to put those links in the comments today. So I'm going to tell you, you can go on our website, tinyhometours.com, and you can find our tiny home quiz, our transition worksheet. And then also you can go to Tiny Home Tours YouTube channel. And again, I just want to mention, I mention this every week, there's so many tours on there that you can look at and get great ideas, whether you're trying to figure out what type of home you want to purchase, where you would put your home, community living. There's so many great ideas on there, and you can see that tiny home living is definitely a doable lifestyle for anyone who's considering it. Chris he put the link up there. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. So I want to leave you guys with, I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving and enjoy yourself. Stay safe. And we'll see you back here next week at 1 p.m. Central for Let's Talk Tiny. Thanks for joining me today on this holiday weekend.